We're just two. Okay, and I'll if I can remember, I'll take the stand too.
We're one song, right? One song. Yeah. All right. Time out there. Okay, so we'll see if I can do it. What's gonna happen? I think after these, I'm gonna remove these. It's time to go off. What? There's no time. Oh yeah, that's India. No, it's over there. Well, there are times.
Let's go.
If I could have your attention for a minute or two. Aha, that was easy. I want to welcome you all and thank you all. I'm overwhelmed at the number of people who have come to celebrate Jack, because that's what we're going to do today. So, and I'm not going to do it. We have a wonderful program set up. And because of that, we will not have an open mic. But as most of you know, and I hope those of you who didn't get the message, we're going to go right on celebrating after we finish celebrating here. And you're invited to come back to our house, our home at 1515 15th Street. And we'll keep right on partying until we can't party anymore. So that could be a long time. And if you don't make it this evening, there's brunch tomorrow as well. So in the true tradition, Jack's spirit, we just keep on celebrating and not worry too much about the fact that he's having to be excluded a little bit from this party, but he is the center of it. And I hope you all are going to enjoy a program which we have of his children and some other wonderful friends who have agreed to speak. And we won't have open mic after that, but anybody who wants to come and tell tales, come on back to the condo afterwards. And I'll leave you now in the gentle hands of Joanna Rhodes and Eric Rice, who are going to do a little music, and then we'll have some speechifying and a little more music to see you back to the bar. And yes? Oh, you probably want to turn your phones off. My phone's turned on, so I hope it doesn't ring. All right. Joanna and Eric, I turn it over to you.
There you were in the wing, the sweet morning sun. I was struck by the stillness and peace. I heard all of the sounds in the trees and on the ground, and I felt the most gentle release. Oh, my stars, we traveled so far on the love of a blue-eyed king. I will breathe in the grace, see the smile on your face, and dance to the song you did sing. As I go along, I will open my arms to the light and the love and the free. I'll go down to the bay and I'll savor the day, make a toast to your sweet memory. Oh, my stars, we traveled so far on the love of a blue-eyed king. I will breathe in the grace, see the smile on your face, dance to the song you did sing. Oh, my stars, we traveled so far on the love of a blue-eyed king. We will breathe in the grace, see the smile upon your face, dance to the song you did sing. Dance in the beauty you dream. Dance through a world you did bring.
I'm Jack's youngest. My name is Felicity. I think I know almost everyone in the room. It's so beautiful to see everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yeah. Mostly I've just been in deep, deep gratitude. I wrote a poem for my dad and for you. In the letters arriving from old friends, memories and tales and remembrances, all adored his charm, his humor, and we will carry and remember his listening ear and thoughtful counsel, his humble brilliance and courtly manner. We knew him as husband and teacher, brother, uncle, friend, and leader. Now, let me speak to what it was to be his youngest daughter. Dad gave me my name and my life together, a life of felicity, of joy and laughter. From my earliest remembering days, whenever I stood within his gaze, those blue eyes filled with the purest adoration filled my cup with love to stand my life's duration and to pass to the next generation. Made me proud just to exist, to be his girl, to be hugged and kissed. This unbridled love was extra extraordinary, for he told me he was not loved so tenderly. As a child, he said his mother was cooler, with stricter, tighter mores to school her. So it staggers my mind all the more, his choice to dynamite open the love door. The love heaped on Mom and me and Quinn, showered upon Eli and Jai with no hesitation, loving touch and sweetest affection. Dad never missed an opportunity to tell us of our wit and beauty. Fostered strength, never raised his voice, taught independence and smart choice, told us we were his deepest pride, told us we could help others far and wide. Mom and Dad gave us plenty of space to grow and learn at our own pace, privacy on the third floor, rooms to sleep and dream and snore, books piled around the house for us to find and sharpen our young and pliant minds. He tended the wheel as we needed it. His touch was light, so when he spoke, we heeded it. He held court from the blue couch and the dining room table, funny, gentle lectures to make us able to ask questions, to listen, to think, to act, to enjoy fiction, but speak just fact, to meet each person whole with all possibility. No matter their origin, meet them with equality. I see then and I see now that all he did was for us, to keep us safe, secure, in trust. Built bonds between us siblings to hold fast, built our family ship to last. We were and we are so incredibly blessed. The R Street house was a beautiful home filled with full of life lived enormously. Mom and Dad flung that huge front door open so generously. Yellow brick portal to all sorts of folks, welcomed in with drinks and jokes. There passed ambassadors of every kind, and most left it fuller of heart and wiser of mind. All those years, they housed foreigners and youngsters, people who became our brothers and sisters. Marco, Emilia, Mathilde, and Nell. Fed them, loved them, taught them well. Chris and Frank Plant and Anna Dufendock. Plied them with eggs and bacon, then wished them luck. Polly, Naomi, Petra, Isabella. If they needed an ear, Dad was their fella. Aubrey, Flavia, Candida, KDO, daughters legion with love overflow. Bright Wang Yi and lovely Wu Min. Here today, married with children. Chinese lovers who met under that roof now have 2 sons, one named John, as honor and proof. Now, dancing with Dad. I must talk about this. He taught me to dance, to waltz. It was bliss. It's all on the knees, he'd say. And just like a stair, he'd bend them, then glide, then float right on air. He taught me to follow his lead, so light. Chin up, shoulders back. Just breathe. That's right. We danced at parties, but mostly on the living room carpet. Didn't matter where we were, just loved it. We just loved it. Old Donna Summer records, don't scratch the needle. We boogied to the Supremes and to the Beatles. Christmas parties at 1645. The big band played, then the Bee Gees jibed. But truly, deeply, the absolute best was dancing with Dad in my wedding dress. He loved my Jack, encouraged our match, indeed did not bat an eyelash, called on his unflappable grace, as was his credo, for when Jack asked for my hand, he wore only a Speedo. Daddy was such a romantic. Life was rich beauty to him, so deeply poetic. He wept often with joy, which we chalked up to his Irish. Good thing he always carried a handkerchief. Gentleman all his days, innate gallantry steered his way. Without fail, he held the line, polite and present and open and kind. Thank you, Daddy, forever gracious. You have made our lives so special and delicious. Thank you for Mom, Jai, Eli, and Quinn. Thank you. I love you. Farewell, Daddykins.
My name is Joe Pressel. If you look at your program, you'll see that I'm supposed to follow Jai Murphy. This was very worrying because Jai is a hell of a tough act to follow. But I got to tell you, Felicity is 10 times worse. For reasons that all of you will understand, this little speech is going to be very hard to do. We all knew Jack Murphy, kind, easy, happy-going, occasionally hard-drinking, flirtatious, interested in sports, open, friendly, talk to anybody about anything, and we'll remember that Jack Murphy. I want to talk about another Jack Murphy. I would like to suggest that Jack Murphy was pretty nearly the complete American. Not the perfect American, any more than America is perfect, but he personified many of those qualities which we look on as being specifically American and being important to our society and to us. And with your permission, I'd like to talk briefly about a few of them. The first is one that you might not think of, and that's respect for the military. No, Jack never served. But those of you who knew his father knew that he was always referred to as the Colonel, with all that that meant. And the respect that Jack had, not just for his father, but for the service that his father had given in Europe, was palpable. That, after all, the military is a fundamental part of the American experience. The second thing I'd like to raise is law. Well, that's easy. He went to law school, he taught law, he practiced law for a little while. He did all kinds of things with the law. And his law was not a dry academic law, and even less a law in which he might do something useful, like make a great deal of money. His law was teaching law, and teaching constitutional law, and teaching law that would enable Americans, women, minorities, those discriminated against, to have a better shot at the America which he exemplified. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about the law. I know that he was more than a mere ornament of Georgetown Law School. He was an important part of it. I also gather that he was among the most popular professors in that school, and I certainly can understand why, and so can you. Another aspect of Jack was his desire to mentor. He mentored everybody. He was incapable of not mentoring. And he was an equal opportunity mentor. He would mentor anybody at all. Most of you have experienced this. He was a pleasant mentor. He was a good mentor. He did it quietly. He did it in a slightly left-handed way. But you ended up taking his advice and mostly acting on it. Jack and Lucinda had an extraordinary quality of friendship. Look to your left and right and you'll understand why. And this friendship transcended generations, it transcended nationalities, it transcended economic class, it transcended anybody. Friendship. And he really meant it. And if you lost track of them for a while and came back, they were there, just as they were before. An aspect of their friendship is to be seen in their hospitality, and Felicity mentioned it. I'm old. I go back to Carolina Place, which most of you probably don't. But I go back to Carolina Place, and then to 1645, and then to R Street, and now to P Street, or whatever it is. But there was more than that. There was also seeing Jack in Czechoslovakia. Hospitality was everywhere. And I should say that their hospitality knows no bounds. In about 20-odd years ago, when Claire and I were waiting for the Senate to confirm me for an overseas assignment, and we'd rented the house, I asked Jack and Lucinda if we could stay with them for a week because the Senate was going to do its thing. And they said, yeah, sure, of course. So we moved into R Street. And 6 weeks later, and we're still friends. I think the last thing I want to say, and this is so obvious as not to need repeating, is the sense of family. Family mattered. Family always mattered. Family mattered for itself. Family mattered for what it symbolizes. Family mattered because it's another generation. Family also mattered because it was such goddamn fun. I think I'd like to conclude by saying that while Jack is the complete American, in view of what's going on around here these days, we not only need to think about him and what he's left, but we kind of need to think about getting more complete Americans. Thank you very much.
Hi. Is this too loud? I usually don't need a microphone. I'll stand back, but wave your hands if it gets loud. I'm Flavia Stanley, and I represent those of us who are here, perhaps as friends of Jai, Eli, Felicity, and Quinn, perhaps as friends of friends, perhaps as the sons and daughters of the friends of Lucinda and Jack, perhaps as exchange students, and even perhaps as the daughters of the friends of Jai, and sons of Jai, Eli, Quinn, and Fliz. I think you get the idea. In any case, we are the ones who have become part of this extended kinship network of the great Murphy-friendly clan. Those who've been lucky enough to have been taken into the fold and treated as family. And I'd love a show of hands to see how many of us there are here today who would proudly sport a button that Christina Bradley wanted to make that says, "Raised by Jack and Lucinda." So let's see the show of hands. That's a lot of people. And there's a lot who didn't make it, couldn't make it today. In the photo slideshow, there's a picture I took last summer when I visited my other parents in Lewis. And it is of Jack and Lucinda at a table on the front porch. I think it's the front porch, right? Because it's back porch, okay. Putting a jigsaw puzzle together. After I took the picture, I sat down with them and started helping out. And what I didn't realize is that my phone kept recording the scene for about 5 minutes. And I didn't discover this recording until a few weeks ago when I was looking for pictures of Jack to share. I'd like to recount some of what was captured in such a small amount of time. First, someone, and I think it's little Seb, walks past to get on one of the nearby hammocks. And Jack says, "Oh, good, get in that hammock, kid." I can't do his voice, but I think you can hear it. And it reminds me of how much happiness Jack got from witnessing both the mundane and the monumental happinesses of others. Whether it was to delight in your desire to take a nap in a hammock, and perhaps he'd even bring you a blanket to make you more cozy, or fixing you one of those famous slippery egg sandwiches to help you greet the day, or welcoming you into the house with an offer of, "What can I bring you?" Or coming to your wedding, and as in my case, taking a really long train ride, even when his back hurt him terribly. Next, he and Lucinda are poking fun of Jai and Eli, who had spent the better part of the day preparing to teach the next generation Dungeons and Dragons. And they worry about their regression. And then suddenly they're discussing 19th century art critic John Ruskin, who, as Lucinda points out, enjoyed the female form in art only. And never consummated his marriage, which then reminds Jack of a limerick that Lucinda's father, Alfred Sr., used to tell, or maybe he even made up, which he delivers so well, which I will not recount in full, except for the last line, which is, "To the thrill of 1,000 pudendas." And it basically kind of ends there. And I thought, it's so perfect. It's so Jack. Despite the many roles that he had as husband, father, professor, citizen of the world, he took the time to get to know those of us in this extended kinship network. And in my case, he made me feel seen and heard and taken seriously. And for his attention and interest, as well as from the love from the greater Murphy Stanley clan, friendly clan, my life has been made better, and I'm eternally grateful. And I know that my brother Chris, who's here today with his wife and 3 kids, shares that sentiment. In grieving the loss of a loved one, I found that the most difficult part can be when a person who's died either doesn't get the love that they deserved or wasn't able to live the life that they really wanted. I had the privilege of being around Lucinda, Jai, and Eli and talking with Fliss and Quinn when Jack got sick, and as heartbreaking as it was to see him so ill, what I saw in those days was also quite beautiful. I got to witness the results of a man who chose his life with Lucinda and their children that he clearly loved so much, and all of whom were there for him, were there at his most vulnerable moments with incredible love and tenderness. And despite his illness, I couldn't help but think how lucky he was. Yesterday, Quinn told me something that Jack would often say, even if, say, they were eating at some sad and smelly rest stop on the side of the highway. And he'd look at all of them gathered around and say, "I'll give you $10,000 if you can tell me a place I'd rather be." So not only did he have the love he deserved, but he definitely had the life that he chose and would choose again and again. And being able to remember Jack as a man who personifies the adage, "a life well lived," is a real gift.
You'll have to consult Jai for the rest of that memory. You remember, not right now.
This is my daughter. Is this working? My name is Steve Sossman. I'm a Murphy. My mother was Jack's older sister. She was 14 when Jack was born. So Jack ended up being 8 years older than I, closer to my age than to his sisters, and of course much closer to his parents. As Joe said, the family for Jack was very, very important. If you don't know his family, you really don't know what he was like as a youth and what he became as an adult. He was born 13 years after his twin sisters and 14 years after my mother was born. So he was raised with 4 mothers. And that accounts pretty much for the way he turned out. This is why he always had such respect for women and as equal opportunity. What did Joe say? Am I connected here? They beat him up if he didn't treat them right, basically. And then, at age 4, one of his mothers ran away with my father. And at age 6, his other mothers ran away with Uncle John here, my Uncle John, Nancy's husband, Dr. Adams, and then with Woodbury Carter, Patsy's husband. They all married during the war. Johnny. And so Jack was suddenly an orphan with a 42-year-old mother. And at that point, he was on his own from about age 7. And they traveled, as made clear, they traveled around the world. He never managed to settle in anywhere with anyone but his family and the military. That was his family. Among the many things Jack taught me was the importance of people's names, because Jack remembered people's names. And I know you. They're important. Names are important, Jack would say, to the people who have them. And I was, kind of young, 8 years younger. But Jack, they all had name tags to remember. Okay, that's the world he grew up in. Everyone had a name and a rank. And another thing he taught me was, as Felicity points out, how to cry. I think the first time I ever saw a man cry was Jack. Back in Connecticut, where I grew up, rural Connecticut, small town, men didn't cry, and they didn't laugh in public with other women, that is. I mean, they laughed in bars, perhaps, or behind the shed. Or when I came to Washington, I found the Irish people here, the Murphys, my grandparents, and Jack and Nancy and Patsy were Irish and full of emotions. And I think Lucinda may remember the night Jack Kennedy was killed. We sat at the Rubens house watching television. I forget what was going on, but remember Barbara, my sister. And my sister was then in Douglas College. This is 1963. And she was in the choir, and they were pressed into service in the Carnegie Hall to do Brahms' Requiem or something. And we were sitting, I was in crisis, of course, as a freshman here at Georgetown. And Jack and Lucinda were living near the university. I ended up at their house along with Dick Gordon that night. And we sat there and we wept. So Jack and I and Dick did. I remember, and some of you remember Gordon is another great professor from Georgetown. Another thing Jack taught me was games. When I was growing up, I was going to be a baseball player. Is my time up? I was going to be a baseball player, but to that end, I practiced a lot. But in small rural town Connecticut, there's not many places to practice. We had Little League and Babe Ruth League, and then after that, you were on your own, throwing the ball up against the side of a building. And the biggest building we had around was my house, and the only ball I had was a tennis ball that I found. We were poor back then, still are, but we were poorer then. And the only ball I had was a tennis ball, which I dutifully scrubbed all the fuzz off it. And I would fling it up against the wall and then run and catch it here, and throw it this way and get the grounders. And I was sure the Yankees were looking for me. And that was my career. I was 12, 13. And that Thanksgiving or maybe on the way to school, to Harvard, my grandparents drove up in their 1949 DeSoto, whatever car they were driving then, with Jack, their only child, at home. And I think my parents were having a party for them, the grandparents, and everybody's inside. And so I took off, went out there, and started up against the house, you know.
You throw your arm. Yep.
And then, you know, bang, bang, bang. And they're sitting there, you know, trying to have a drink, you know. And so I wasn't there, I didn't hear it, but I can imagine the Colonel Murphy saying, tell that son of a bitch to shut the kid up. You know, my dad said, tell her so. And my mom said, no, don't, you were going to ruin his future, you know, don't spoil his dreams. And then finally they say, Jack, go, tell him this, we can't think. Here, we can't talk and drink. And so Jack came out. That day, I should say, I had, earlier that day, I had found a golf club. I never played golf when I was 12 or 13, but I'd found a golf club. We lived near the golf course, and I found a golf club that somebody had flung from the tee after a bad shot, a 9-iron that ended up in the hedge that right across from my school bus stop. And kids' eyes, we spot things like that. And I brought it home, and I knew Jack played golf. I think he played at Harvard, or he was a good golfer. And I showed him the club that afternoon, and then subsequently I went outside and was working on my future. And Jack came out, and he had the golf club. And he's, swinging it a couple times, and bang, bang. And he says, let me see that ball. Okay? Now, I've been to Yankee Stadium. Okay? It's about 450 feet to the center field wall. Jack took the 9-iron and my tennis ball. And he hit it over the garage and into the woods. Jack, it's my only tennis ball. He acted as if he had no idea that it wasn't important to me. And he said, did you want that ball? I said, oh, no. And from then on, I became a golfer. It was the end of my baseball career. You cannot hit a tennis ball 450 feet with a baseball bat. Hard ball, yeah. And what else, mate? You were going to say something? My time is up. See if there's anything else. Thank you very much.
I hope I'm just as long. My name is Wally Malinik. I'm on the faculty at Georgetown. I met Jack when he was the first of the new breed of Georgetown law professors. And I was the first of the new and troublesome breed of Georgetown law students. We forged a bond back then. We had similar goals, similar ideas, and we maintained that bond for 50 years. Both with a love and appreciation for Georgetown. On another occasion, a happier one than this, I said that there's a certain fear that anyone should have when asked to speak about John Murphy. It's a fear that one's words will be compared to those that Jack would give at a similar occasion and be found woefully lacking. So it is today because my words, indeed, all of our words, cannot capture the wit, the charm, the elegance, more importantly, the worth of this wonderful friend, this good man, friend to so many of us. This husband of Lucinda, his dance partner for 55 years, father, grandfather, who surrounded his family with warmth, guidance, and love every day of their lives together. As I get older, I find myself railing against death. How unfair. We spend a lifetime trying to discern meaning, to know who we are and who we belong to, and who belongs to us. And when we finally have some inkling, some answers to those questions, death comes, sometimes slowly, sometimes with little warning, depriving us of the ability to share the answers to those questions with the people we love. But then there are a lucky few who glide through life, aware of meaning, knowing the answers to those questions, sharing their wisdom with those around them, making life's turmoil somehow a little easier, our steps a little lighter, our dreams a little more attainable. Jack Murphy was that man. Jack knew who he was, Jack knew who he belonged to, and Jack knew who belonged to him. Lucinda, Jai, Quinn, Eli, Felicity, they know this very, very deeply. They saw it daily in his twinkly eyes and crackly smile. They treasured every moment, from silly bedtime stories to feeding whoever walked in the door. All of you people here, it seems, walked in that door at one time or another. From raucous family trips, eating on the side of a road, to those serious art installations and shows of Lucinda's magnificent art. But a legion of us also belonged to him, and he belonged to us, and that is evident by those of us who gather here today. The Legion can be found, of course, in the United States, but as we've heard, Jack's world was the world itself. Friends can be found in Switzerland, Czech Republic, China, and Mexico, and probably still in some little corner of war-torn Beirut, all places where Jack's life touched countless of students, countless friends, and countless colleagues. As we've heard, Jack paid attention and made us all belong to each other. In this house, this Georgetown house, the house that Jack helped build, he was the column that held this house up, especially in the most precarious times, difficult times for the nation and the city, the turbulent 1960s and 70s, and in other tenuous times, too often recurring for the Law Center. Anything you see around you here on this 7-acre campus can have Jack's fingerprints on it. Like the mighty Irish chieftain Cuchulainn guarding Ulster, Jack was a fearless warrior for the Law Center, for its independence. From the beginning and all he did, Jack was the voice of progressivism, the voice of courage, the voice of steadfastness in our drive to determine our own fate. His public accomplishments in his life, both for the nation and for Georgetown, are really too many to relate here. You can find them in testimonials in newspapers, Georgetown histories, on the Georgetown website. But we remember him, as our colleague Mitt Regan said recently, Jack was our own Hamilton, he was our own Jefferson, he was our own Adams, forging a modern law school with unmatched combination of urbanity, polish, and humor. But a good man is more than what he accomplishes in life. A good man is revealed in how he lives his life, a story written not just in great deeds, but in the simple, everyday deeds of a life which often go unrecorded, like those we've witnessed in Jack's life, and a life that we were all fortunate enough to share. Quinn told me the other day that Jack continually reminded his children about how blessed he was. He told us that too, with wit and charm and words so perfectly chosen, so fluidly delivered, that even a tug lashing never felt its sting. Jack knew we belonged to each other, and so even his most critical words were delivered in ways that made us grow rather than shrink. His life was blessed, and so was ours because he chose to share it with us. But death comes, speaking with a loud voice, a voice of grief and pain for all of us here. Yet it also speaks in whispers as we remember the wit, the charm, the love of, and the love for this good man. Good men like Jack are never forgotten. William Butler Yeats, again writing about Cuchulainn, I actually love Cuchulainn, Cuchulainn and other ancient Irish heroes, reminds us that we must keep these personages much in our hearts, for they live in the places where we ride and go marketing. And sometimes they have met one another on the hills that cast the shadows on the doors of our doors of evening. Modern heroes deserve as much. So we will feel Jack's presence as we walk around DuPont Circle. When we see a boater, when we see a white suit, we see white and brown saddle, what do they call those shoes? Saddle shoes. We'll feel it at the beach in Lewis. We'll feel it in countries around the world. And we here at Georgetown, his colleagues, will feel it here in the halls of this law center. The Irish people, both the green and, as Jack used to say, the orange, are people formed by words, both Celtic and English. I leave you with the words not from an Irish poet today, but from a Scottish Celt, Robbie Burns, words that befit our good friend Jack. An honest man lies here at rest, a friend of man, a friend of truth, a friend of age, the guide of youth. Few hearts like his, with virtue warmed, few heads with knowledge so informed. If there is another world, he lives in bliss. If there is none, he made the best of this. Thank you.
I'm Jai Murphy. Thank you all for being here. I have to say a few more things. I'm sorry. I had meant to do this without preamble, but I'm a very quick preamble. I'm a freshman in high school. I have a friend over for the weekend, Saturday morning. I'm trying to tell this friend about my dad. And I'm in the middle of really not quite remembering the story how it is to my friend. And I'm saying, and Dad comes in. I'm going, and Dad, can you tell him about the time and you were at New York Military Academy and you went home with a friend and you slept 24 hours in the weekend and then I was up 48 hours straight and then you came down when you got your nose stuck in the flypaper and you said, any mail for me? And Dad looked at me and he said, Murphy, do not overstate the legend that is your father. And so I'm sorry, Dad, but it's a chance I'm going to take. It is not my body that was born a surprise on the cusp of summer on an island in New York Harbor with the bountiful sea at hand, in a hard, spare army hospital of steel and porcelain, and that commenced immediately suffering the endless, tender ministrations of women, a mother, 2 mothers, 4 mothers, a sorority of love that carried it, cooed and soothed it, fortified and anointed it for the world to come. That at the age of 10 bore the battering and buffeting of the steel bolt bucket of a ship caught in the implacable storm upon the terrible sea. Days on end below decks, bruised, dry heaving, dizzy, days on end that knew the tangible fear of its women. Little man of the family, going to China to find his father. China, the other side of the world, where everyone must surely fall off into space if the world ever stops spinning. Yes, that at the age of 10 understood what it might be to die, until the gasping, disintegrating hulk came in at last to find that father and a teeming nation where no one had fallen off. And so the world must still be spinning, right? That was banged 14 times off the hard carapace of a new school and grew 6 feet in 13 years, an army brat that ran and leapt high and swung the golf club 100,000 times, that fell off the horses and got back on them, and oh, that loved to watch them run. The purity of that. Whose face purpled and blacked from scalp to clavicle, whose head swelled hellishly after the careless butcher of a dentist ripped out the wisdom teeth all at one helpless sitting, and that went right on getting wiser. That went alone to military school, where it ate square meals squarely, and busted hump working, studying, polishing, got up raw in the cold and dark to work the early shift before classes, busted collarbone tackling, busted teeth high jumping, slept 48 hours straight when it could, busted through to the Ivy League. Whose bones knew love, who with a magnificent brain bursting with learning of law school went home one evening to mother and father and spoke from those bones. Brain and breath and bone vibrated together, said, I've met the girl I'm going to marry. That loved women of every kind and beauty, but married the best of them all, and set about loving her long and well. Whose brilliant blue eyes 55 years later still honeymooned on her face when she entered the room, bloomed bluer and more brilliant at the sound of her voice. That braved the Atlantic with her on a steamer and waltzed from Crete to Copenhagen in 40 glorious days. It is not my body that, high up with her in the Alps, looked up, astounded, to find a ski had hijacked a knee halfway around the world, with a foot sticking out on the other side, where everyone would fall off if it ever stopped spinning. That gave up beloved golf for her, a far better love, and to make room for new lives. Whose arms and legs lifted the handles and drove the wheelbarrow that lives in the earliest memory of his first child, aged 2 or 3, sitting atop the barrow full of garden clippings, rolling to the bluff to be dumped over the edge. And the child, knowing, without even knowing, that no harm could come to it inside the cocoon of a father's love, delighted in the quiet terror of approaching the abyss, in the sheer, unfettered joy of the ride back, going home. And that saved the life of this same child, aged 9, choking on hard candy, turned the boy upside down, held him firmly by the ankles, and shook the candy out. That raised 4 of these children and reveled in them, loved them from its bones, suffered twice their pain whenever harm came to one, wished it could be him instead, embodied for them the virtues its own father had championed, honor, duty, truth, added laughter, openness, patience, curiosity, that taught them that father's lesson and lived it. Treat the man below you the same way you treat the man above. That lived out loud for those children bedtime stories of Tom Tom the cat and Murgatroyd the mouse, of Smiley the friendly giant and the unfriendly giant Herman Gruggetts. Hey, Smiley, quit grinning like that. It's like the sun coming up. I can't see a thing. You can't see anything, Herman? No, I can't see a thing. Oh, that's too bad, Herman, because you're going to miss this. And went thwack as fist cracked into the palm explosively, and the whole man thunderously fell off the bed and crashed to the floor, shook the whole house. Who would crouch in the sea and face one of his children, whose two hands made a stirrup for the one small foot, and whose forehead waited patiently for the small hands to splay across it to steady the small body, would count 1, 2, 3, yah! And those arms would vault the child up into the clear air, somersaulting backwards to fall again into the embracing sea. That saw a fragile and marvelous democracy, saw the law as a living thing, raised a finger and said, of the freedoms guaranteed, of the obligations demanded, of the fragile, marvelous compact. Pay attention to this. This is important. Whose hands, the most beautiful hands I have ever seen, my sister said, whose hands were gentle, whose touch made you stand straighter, and steered the van across continents and back, and held cold beers in foam cozies and rolled dice for standing around backgammon, ticked paper footballs across the dining table, produced passports, maps, credit cards, cash from pockets countless on its traveler's vest, whenever a cross-country camping trip demanded them, that was prepared, that knew what the hell it was doing, that knew the way, whose hands gave 11,000 back scratches, and whose back, even in the end, maybe most of all in the end, loved to be scratched. Oh, give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our back scratches, for we love those who back scratch upon us. All hail the slippery egg sandwich. And give thanks. Let us give thanks for the humble tin roof Sunday and rainy days at the beach with or without a whistling northwest wind. That started traditions, ran naked over the dunes and flung itself in the freezing bosom of the Delaware Bay at midnight of the new year and stood around like the firefighters in Catch-22. That toasted and drank champagne on the sandbar with his wife and best friends, all of them standing on the surface of the sea while the tide was out. That could tell a joke very dry, but more often lived it from fingers to toe tips. That danced and was elegant, whose dance was so joyous it gave others license to dance their whole lives long. Which caught frisbees behind the back, running full tilt, and fell into the sea on the follow-through, whose back went out and came back and went out and came back after long, brilliant summer days lying on the front room couch at Lewis, that flipped hats onto its head, that danced and smoked and drank all night and then flipped motorcycle helmets onto its head, that resurrected itself at age 45, quit smoking to run again, corded sinew magically popping out all over the legs, a wonder to the 15-year-old son. Geez, Dad, your legs are strong. To run again, even 10 kilometers at a time, and afterwards to drink wine. That swatted back 4 heart attacks and diabetes and lost a small section of the lower intestines without telling almost anyone. That along the line lost 4 front teeth, got falsies, and never stopped smiling. Whose smile crackled when you made it smile right, an expression not just of pleasure but of all existence suddenly graced for that moment. And it is not my body that walked without complaint on its charcot feet of countless co-minuted bonelets that only hurt when they could be felt, after all, whose heart and spirit could not refuse rhythm, and so instead refused to stop dancing, and so resurrected the body again to drip elegantly in black and white wingtips and boater in the Pacific sunset light at the wedding with the youngest of his children on her wedding day, that wouldn't stop dancing until all the weddings were done, and even later, that stiff-legged it over the dune regardless for the barbecue on the beach and never stumbled. It is not my body that finally got badness caught in its throat, God damn it, and couldn't get it out. And this stricken body, the child, had not strength enough to turn upside down, to shake the badness out, to return the favor. And his body accepted this too as truth, and generous as ever, forgave the favor. That had a last drink and gave it up. Now I breathe where he may not, and with my breath I sing this body that gave mine life. Since I could not save it, I watched as it raced away from me. My brother and I held his hands as he went, and it was quiet. But just before that, as he came around the last turn, he shook off the death rattle in his throat, shook off everything but the finish. His breathing changed suddenly, found a new rhythm, like a racehorse changing leads and finding its stride again. And inside, I heard a thoroughbred come thundering down the stretch. I saw it running freely, bound for first place, beyond doubt. Eyes past seeing, no matter now, nothing in sight but the finish line, and the body, as it always had, knew the way, all the way, home. He was driven away for the last time by a young woman. She was polite, well-dressed, lovely. They would have charmed one another if they had only met. Before she left, I said, "If you want to play some tunes on the ride, he'd like that." "Oh, a music lover, eh?" "And dance. He loved to dance. He danced all through his life, until his legs and feet wouldn't let him. And even then, he danced when the occasion called him to it." She said, "That's how I want to live my life." Thank you very much.
"8 years old with flour sack cape tied all around his neck. Climbed up on the garage, figuring what the heck. Now he screwed his courage up so tight, the whole thing come unwound. Got a running start, bless his heart, headed for the ground. He's one of those that knows that life's just a leap of faith. Spread your arms and hold your breath, and always trust your key. All grown up with a flour sack cape tied all around his dreams. And he was full of piss and vinegar, busting at the seams. Well, he licked his finger and he checked the wind, gonna be do or die. But he wasn't afraid of nothing, boys. He was pretty sure he could fly. He's one of those that knows that life's just a leap of faith. Spread your arms and hold your breath and always trust your cave. Now he's old and gray with a flower-side cape tied all around his head. He's still jumping off the garage and will be till he's dead. All these years, the people said he was acting like a kid. He wasn't afraid of nothing, boys, so he's flying like he did. Yeah, he's one of those that knows that life's just a leap of faith. Spread your arms, hold your breath, and always trust your case. Yeah, he's one of those that knows that life's just a leap of faith. Spread your arms and hold your breath, and always trust your case. Spread your arms and hold your breath, and always trust your case.
Are you familiar with some of the 5 minutes that you have? You're all right. Yeah, I'm sitting next to him.